Hi there, I'm Goradia. I'm a Somatic Experiencing practitioner on the non-dual path. Today I want to share how people with autism and ADHD can benefit from grounding in their bodies. Over the years, I've worked with many people on the spectrum of either of these, and they've reported to me, many of them feeling like their mind is always spinning or active. Some have even reported feeling trapped in their minds, especially in their conceptual way of seeing things. And so there's often a tendency to prioritize intellect and put attention here over kinesthetic or somatic awareness. And so a lot of times it's just how the neural wiring has occurred. And what we want to do is kind of be aware of where that can increase mind activity, which I think most of us know, especially those of you who watch this channel. The mind activity, the constant churning of the mind, is where suffering arises. And so it's really important to know how to calm this, how to still the mind, come into the body, anchor here, be in our direct experience, in our sensory experience, and we can still come into the mind as we need to use it, and then come back down into our sensory experience, meaning listening, seeing, and body sensations. Now the other two, taste and smell, you can have when you're eating. And so once we learn how to kind of shift between the two, that's where we can get the relief when we need it. Otherwise, too much attention and focus and activity up in the mind can cause burnout. And many people refer to autistic burnout, and I know that can include a lot of managing of sensory overstimulation as well. So many people are compartmentalizing and conceptualizing and using this almost like an intellectual bypass to help manage the overwhelming sensory input or the emotions that we were never given tools for. And so we manage the best we can. And so these sort of tendencies, which may be stronger than the average person who's also managing in this same way with these mental intellectual strategies, resisting emotions, it can be stronger in people with autism and ADHD. So for these people, it's especially important to be attempting to anchor into the body as often as possible. I would say every hour, even if it's just for 30 seconds, a little bit of compression. I'm going to actually link a video up here about physical resourcing techniques. And I show a lot of these compression or touch sort of resources, and then you place your attention where you're touching. And it's going to bring your attention out of the conceptual thinking into the sensory experience. But furthermore, compression, firm pressure, is actually calming to the mind and the body, whereas light touch is stimulating. So as much pressure as possible throughout the day, even if it's 1 to 5 minutes every hour. And it feels really good. It feels like someone's giving you a hug. And I know not everyone likes touch, but if it's self-touch, I'd love for you to explore that video and find the ones you like in that video. You might not like all of them, so then it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel resourceful. So just find the ones that you like and see if you can employ those throughout the day. And it's going to pull you more into the body as you do this. And then you might have to feel what you've been avoiding feeling in the body, all the sensory overstimulation, the emotions. So what we want to do is we need to widen our container, widen our ability to hold these emotions. So luckily, these physical resourcing exercises, they do expand the container, but they're also going to bring you into the body. And so when you're here, I'll actually link a video here that talks about the container, and it gives like an analogy that I think will be useful for you. So as you widen this container and you're landing more in the body, what will happen is these emotions will arise and you might have the same reflex. Okay, I'm going to mentally resist. I'm going to not feel and I'm going to go back into thinking. Just notice that reflex. And then don't beat yourself up if that happens. This is just the autopilot. It's going to happen for everybody. But you start becoming more and more conscious of that tendency. And then you kind of tell yourself, okay, I noticed that without judgment. I want to transcend that habit. I want to start to see if this time I don't follow that thought that tells me to come up here and bring my attention up here, stay with this, and I'm going to welcome it. So it's the resistance that keeps the emotions locked in the body. And I'm going to allow it and welcome it, try to meet it. It just wants to be met with self-compassion. You can find my video on self-compassion as well. And you can kind of learn how to even speak to it so that it feels safe and not judged. No one wants to be judged, right? So when we judge our emotions, they kind of duck under and hide back in the body. So they want to be met with this empathy, this compassion. And as that happens, if it's overwhelming, you can use titration. I will link a titration video here that explains it conceptually, but the way you would do it, say like the emotion is like this big in your throat, and it's just overwhelming. You could pick just a little tiny chunk of it, a piece of it, and just work on that part where you're trying to welcome it, just feel it, accept it, allow it, speak to it with compassion, like in the self-compassion video or in the self-empathy video. And so as you do that, it might start to release, harmonize, and you can pick another chunk, and do it in a manageable way. You can also just ask, hey, body, that's too much for me. Can you just show me 10% of it, 20% of it? Somehow this really works. I've actually never seen it not work. And I've used this for a decade with clients and with myself. So it might sound kind of funny, like, how is that possible? But just try it and see. And somehow your body will just bring up what you can handle. That's another way to titrate. And then you just feel that through. And then once it's felt through, it might pass through your body or it might stay, and that's okay, as long as you're not resistant to it. Then it's not a problem. It's just like feeling your clothing on your skin. And so once that's calmed down, then you can pull up the next 10 or 20%. So that's how you can use the titration. But just know that you've probably been avoiding the feelings in your body because it hasn't felt safe there for a lot of people, because of trauma, because we weren't taught how to be in the body. So when we, make that journey from the head down into the heart and in the body, we're going to feel all the stuff we've been avoiding. So just be ready for that. But just know you can keep soothing yourself. It's all about self-soothing with autism and ADHD, and soothing in the body. So in addition to the physical resourcing exercises, if you have a weighted blanket, many people have benefited from that. And then you kind of drape that either over your lap or around you, or lie down under it, and then put your attention on where the blanket is making contact with you. Feel the pressure and just kind of scan the body and just focus on that. Don't focus on the mind while you're under the weighted blanket or while you're doing these physical resourcing exercises. Bring your attention. Attention is the currency. Attention is where everything happens. If you can shift attention away from suffering, away from thinking, and I'm going to link a video for that, where I talk about how to do that and why. It's actually 2 parts. So I'll link the first part of the video, but how to surrender mental attachments. And it's basically how to surrender efforting, which is constant thinking. And then I want you to watch part 2, the one right after that, which actually will take you through a guided meditation on how to undo that. We want to learn, even if the mind is active, how to disidentify from the mind, how to not give it so much importance, how to shift attention away from it and not fall for it. It's always wanting our attention. We want to shift that attention away to the body over and over and over. And if the body's feeling overwhelmed or unsafe, shift it to listening. What can I hear? What can I see? Shift it, shift it, shift it. And it's going to start dissolving a lot of the reflexive mental activity. If it gets too overwhelming, you might want to work with someone who can help guide you and how to release it a little bit at a time and how to feel safer in your body. I'd like for you to watch the video right before this one on integration, because it's going to explain what we're trying to do here. So when we have tons of different conceptual thoughts, and what we've done basically is with trauma or just with the neural wiring of autism and ADHD, there can be a lot of metaphorical mind splitting. And what I mean by that, nothing bad. It's just that lots of conceptualizations, compartmentalizations, coping mechanisms, ego identities. It's what everyone does. All people do this, but it might just be a little bit more tightly wired. And so what we're trying to do, what I talk about in the integration video, is we're trying to pull all those back. We're trying to integrate. We're trying to welcome all of that, because when I welcome feelings, these strategies, coping mechanisms that were helping me not feel, they start softening, they start dissolving. And so when I say welcome, we're not welcoming thoughts. We're not, putting too much attention here. We're welcoming feelings. And as this dissolves and integrates back into the whole, it's not compartmentalized. It's not separate from all of your energy. Now the energy is more oceanic and moving more freely through your mind and your body. It's not stuck in little places. So we want to welcome the energies together, the feelings, and your coping mechanisms will collapse, which at first might be a little scary. You might be a little unfamiliar, but in the long run, it's freedom. And as we do this, it will help us land in this moment, in the present moment. When we're in mental abstractions or conceptualizations, the mind is always in the past or the future. Very rarely are we chewing on something that's happening in our present experience. And so as we come into our body, we're experiencing the now. And then as we can get comfortable with this and soothe every time that we kind of feel overwhelmed, we're going to start feeling safer being in our bodies, being in the present moment. And when we land in the present moment safely, that's when we have more access to traumas coming up. We can feel them through and they can kind of release, because it's hard to release old traumas if we're in fight or flight right now. The body's not, it's dealing with an emergency right now. And sometimes with sensory stimulation and emotions that have, been suppressed for so long, it can just keep feeling like we're in fight or flight. We just keep trying to manage with more and more thoughts. And so as we start to come into the body, we're going to have an anchor, something that can tether us in a way that all of this can kind of calm down. So this is kind of like air, this mental activity, and then this is like earth, the body, like we want to ground. I'm also going to make a video next week about earthing and grounding, because not only have I found it beneficial to be grounding in the body, but when we ground into the actual earth, it's incredible. I'm doing a lot of research on this right now, but my direct experience of this has been, it's just a whole nother level of grounding, stability, security. And you can think of the earth as our cosmic body, and another aspect of creation or the universe that's not separate from us. But we've been separated from it since the 1960s, when people started putting rubber soles on the bottoms of our shoes. And it's not natural to be separate from the earth. So I think a lot of people could benefit from this too. Just go outside, walk barefoot. Don't do that near where there's electrical lines. You want to make sure it's just like in a natural setting in a park or somewhere where there's no lines underneath. But see what that does in calming your mind. Lie down in a park and read a book. Well, maybe don't even read a book. Don't engage your mind. Look at the birds, look at nature. Nature can be so grounding. So please check out that next video as well. I hope this helped. I know it can be so difficult to manage the overstimulation that can come with autism and ADHD, but please know that when you know what to do, when you've got some, tools and tips and resources, it's so much easier. So please feel free to, post any comments or questions below. I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time.